Good morning, Cedar Valley. Woo! I really want you to turn around, take a look, because everybody in this room has invested their time, their talent for us to move forward in our initiative with Cedar Valley, Iowa. I'm going to give you the logistics of the layout this morning. The restrooms are to the left. You can get up and walk around, get water, pop, continental breakfast at any time. We are very pleased to have you here this morning. Without further ado, my minute was 5 minutes, but I cut that short real quick. So this morning we have a message from Governor Reynolds and our Lieutenant Governor. So enjoy your day. I will be your host or your MC for today. Please, please enjoy your day.
Welcome. I am so excited to share a brief message with you today as part of our Future Ready Iowa Summits taking place across our great state. We're fortunate to live in a state where collaborative solutions run deep, and I see this in communities all across Iowa. Your participation in this regional Future Ready Iowa Summit is a testament to how Iowans work as a team toward an optimistic and shared vision, where every job is filled and every worker is fulfilled. So thank you for taking the time to bring your ideas and suggestions today as we work to close Iowa's skilled workforce gap. Future Ready Iowa is my top priority. It's about changing lives. It's about growing our communities, expanding our economy, and keeping our people right here in Iowa. It's about giving Iowans the opportunity to learn a high-demand skill and then not only get a job to pay the bills, but also a rewarding career. This effort is a great pathway for Iowans to achieve their dreams and help employers hire skilled workers for their businesses. It's helping our state evolve into a place where high-demand jobs link directly to a skilled workforce. Today, just over half of our workforce has training or education beyond high school, making it difficult to fill more than 62,000 open jobs in our state. By 2025, my goal is for 70% of Iowa workers to have the skills they need to land a great job. And in order to achieve that goal, an additional 127,700 Iowans need to be credentialed for success. While that's a big challenge, we're well on our way. And it started when Iowa received a National Governors Association Talent Pipeline grant to align our education and workforce systems to empower students and ensure employee success. Next, we established the Future Ready Iowa Alliance, and this alliance was comprised of state agencies and leaders across business, community, education, and nonprofit sectors. They were charged with forming recommendations to address the multifaceted workforce shortage issue. The Alliance made 5 recommendations, and today, you're part of the Alliance's 5th recommendation to engage business, community, and other regional partners in a grassroots strategy. So I'd like to extend my appreciation to the Alliance members, Iowa Workforce Development, Iowa Business Council, the Iowa Department of Education, and of course the Governor's STEM Advisory Council, Iowa Economic Development Authority, Iowa College Age, Iowa Area Education Agencies, and Iowa Works. One of the best parts of being governor of Iowa is seeing firsthand how Iowans see opportunities in every challenge and use our ingenuity to identify solutions. So I can't wait to hear about your workforce solutions for your local community. Thank you again for participating in the next step in our journey to create quality jobs and unlimited opportunities for Iowans in all 4 corners of our state. And now I'd like to turn it over to Lieutenant Governor Adam Gregg for a special welcome message. Have a great day.
Well, thank you, Governor, and a warm hello to all of you. Today, you'll have the opportunity to meet stakeholders and community members who, just like you, are committed to enhancing our workforce. You'll have the opportunity to step up and contribute to a project or find a future-ready Iowa perspective in the work that you're already doing. Without a hyper-local focus and commitment from leaders like you, the initiatives outlined in the Future Ready Iowa bill would just be good ideas. Thanks to your work, your passion, and your visions for your communities, Future Ready Iowa initiatives will make a real impact to you and your neighbors. I have no doubt that we will define successful strategies at each regional summit and work toward inclusive and equitable solutions that will benefit the lives of Iowans into the future. When all of us work together behind localized workforce strategies, we can push our state closer to the Future Ready Iowa goal of having 70% of Iowa's workers have education or training beyond high school by 2025. Thank you for all of your efforts and your commitment to embrace and advance Future Ready Iowa initiatives. Like Governor Reynolds, I look forward to hearing about the solutions that will help grow local businesses and create skilled workers in your communities.
Welcome to Central Rivers Area Education Agency. My name is Sam Miller. I'm the Chief Administrator here, and thank you for joining us for such an important event. I'd like to start by asking all the people that served on a planning committee for this event to please stand. Thank you. A few other house cleaning items I want to share is today at lunch, we're actually going to have 2 buffet lines. So please, at that time, feel free, grab your lunch. You can eat out in the rotunda, come back in here. Normally I would say go out on the veranda, but today you may want to avoid the veranda as it's 22 degrees. One of our areas, Central Perk, will be having a meeting in there, so we will just be limited to these 2 areas, but we should have plenty of seats for you. So let's get started. When I said welcome to Central Rivers AAA, I'm guessing some of you thought, what's an AAA? Instead of me explaining, we have our very own Azim, a Cedar Valley student, to explain the work of the Iowa AAA system.
Iowa's area education agencies have been here for nearly 5 generations of our state students to make sure everyone in our state from birth through age 21 has access to the highest quality education. Together with local schools and families, Iowa's AEAs make sure students have access to resources that most schools couldn't afford on their own, like virtual reality glasses, physical therapists, and all kinds of awesome learning opportunities for our teachers. Awesome! Iowa's AEAs are also providing local schools with a set of new tools to identify struggling students faster, get them help sooner, and prevent them from falling behind. They also want to make sure every student who graduates is ready for college or a career. How are they doing that? By partnering with our local schools to offer the latest research, teaching practices, and all kinds of cool new materials our teachers can use every day. They also have some pretty smart experts who work with our teachers to make sure they have everything they need to help us. Did you know they did all that? I bet you didn't. Iowa's area education agencies are partner in education for over 40 years. Learn more about how your local area education agency is supporting students in your school district at www.iowaAEA.org.
As you saw in the video, while Iowa's AEAs are proud of our work with students with special needs, we're also busy helping teachers with their own professional development, including providing tools and strategies for meeting the increasing challenge of child and adolescent mental health. Today's conference is about our future workforce needs in the Cedar Valley. As a former teacher, principal, and superintendent, I can tell you that years ago, college and career readiness was not a priority that it is today. In 2018, all educators have an increased sense of urgency around putting students in an optimal position beyond just graduating from high school. The Iowa AEA system is contributing to these efforts. We have a short video that shares some compelling data in our work in this area.
As a state, we're proud of the fact that we are first in the nation with a high school graduation rate of 91.2%. But what happens after graduation? Of Iowa's 34,000 high school graduates, only about 24,000 of them actually end up enrolling in post-secondary education, meaning that annually, about 10,000 Iowa high school graduates do not move on with their education. And that statistic gets even worse when broken down by a student's race, family income, or if a disability is present. So while Iowa is leading the pack in graduation rate, too many of our students aren't receiving the training beyond high school to thrive in the world of work. 78% of those who graduate from high school do not go on to achieve a 2-year degree, placing Iowa 37th in the nation. And about 62% of those who graduate from high school do not go on to achieve a 4-year degree, placing Iowa 45th in the nation. So what does this mean for Iowa? Lost tuition dollars, lost opportunities, workforce needs not being met, a lack of economic development? and a host of statewide impacts that go far beyond any one student. Iowa's area education agencies are working with local educators to change this trend. Together, we are developing tools and resources that teachers can use to ensure that all students understand the value of post-secondary training, like AEA Prep, a statewide partnership and resource center to improve post-secondary readiness, or AEA Learning Online, a service which helps school districts manage local career and technical learning initiatives, like Pella's Registered Apprenticeship Program, and on-demand online learning modules that provide career-based pathways for Iowa's industries. Together with our local schools, we want to ensure that all Iowa students are equipped to thrive beyond high school and have pride in the education they received in our state. We are Iowa's AEAs.
As you saw in the video, Iowa must get better in helping our students get the skills and training our state workforce will need. By all of us working together, I'm confident the Cedar Valley is primed and ready to meet this challenge. Mayor Jim Brown of Cedar Falls has been a member of the Future Ready Cedar Valley's Executive Committee since it first started meeting and planning this event. He has a few words of encouragement for us. Please help me welcome Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Sam. What Sam failed to mention is that you now have, one after another, two Ottumwa Bulldogs introducing each other. We graduated a year apart. You know, when he came to town, I made sure to hit him up right away and said, you know, I know the things you did and you know the things I did back in high school, so if I won't tell, you won't tell, and we made that deal. Thank you for coming. This is an incredible group of people I see around me. It reminds me of the kind of group of people that at the end of the day, it's like my daughters, one's in Iowa State now and one is in high school, but virtually every day after school, you know, you typically ask your kids, you know, how was your day at school, and what's the typical answer? Fine. So I made something up long ago, and I always said, hey, good day, fun day, bad day? And they said, what, Dad? No, good day, fun day, great day. And so they'd have to explain how their day was good, great, or fun. Through all this initiative of the planning the last couple of years, you know, I know Mayor Hart, good friends, and you know, we kind of are able to bounce things off of each other from time to time, and one of the key components for us is economic development. And we've done pretty well in the Cedar Valley, incredibly well for that type of growth. But as I go to various different meetings, when we hear one of the challenges as workforce, it kind of works against what we're going for. In other words, we can go out and have more companies, we can go out and have $100+ million of growth every year, but if there's a stifling mechanism there that they can't find good workers, we got to help in that initiative. And that's where I think this comes in play, this great day today. I mentioned before, there's a lot of great folks with a lot of different backgrounds represented in this room, and that is exactly what it's going to take to move this great initiative forward. This is my background in terms of certification and licensure, so I was especially excited to have this piece move forward, have some great colleges, universities within the Cedar Valley and across the state make this initiative what it can be. So although today is a culmination of a lot of great work from a lot of great people, it is just the beginning. So on behalf of the city of Cedar Falls, make it a great day and welcome. Thank you.
Good morning, and I want to say this too, Deborah. Welcome to the Future Ready Cedar Valley Summit. I want to open with giving thanks again to Sam Miller and the Central Rivers Area Education Association and all of the staff. They've organized a great day for us today. Let's give them a round of applause. I'd also like to thank Deborah Hodges-Harmon and Beth Townsend for being here, and Iowa Workforce Development for really taking workforce development seriously across the state of Iowa. And there's always folks behind the scenes. We did introduce the steering committee, the folks who are on the planning commission, but I'd really like to focus for a moment on the Institute for Decision Making at the University of Northern Iowa. Drew Conrad and James Holscher, they're standing in the back on the other side of the door. They're gonna run just in case things start breaking down.
They've done a remarkable job of organizing everything that we're going to be working on today, so thank you to both of you. And thank you also to Governor Reynolds, Lieutenant Governor Gregg, to Sam, Deborah, to Mayor Brown for that warm welcome. My name is Jim Wolpart. I have the distinct honor and pleasure of serving as the Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Northern Iowa. Thank you to everyone in this room for joining us for this adventure today. We will be assessing the current state of workforce development needs in the state. We are gathered together as over 300 human resource professionals, business owners, school administrators, teachers, legislators, community college and university faculty, staff, and administrators, economic developers, parents, taxpayers, and students. How about all the students who welcomed us this morning? Let's give them a round of applause. We have participants today from Jessup to Grundy, LaPorte City to New Hampton, Waterloo, and Cedar Falls. It is imperative that we gather today, for we have work that we need to do. Work that starts with listening and learning, brainstorming, and with challenging each other. Ultimately, we will need to roll up our sleeves and determine what will we do together as a collective community. Now, I'll tell you, if you've been around me long, you know that I have no interest in holding gatherings that have no purpose or meaning to them and that don't end with action. If we're not going to make a difference, there's no reason for us to spend time together, and we are all committed to being here today, and we will make a difference at the end of this. This is not about coming together to feel good, check a box, or get away from the desk for the day. Today we'll end with action forums, and you can see the placards around the room. After the last breakout section, you will come in, you'll gather around those, and we will start brainstorming different ideas about how we will address these challenges. And we will ask you to sign up to be part of a working group that will be part of what we will do over the next year. So this is not something that we will come, check the box, and be done with today. This is really the beginning of a movement that will unfold over the next year. To start, I'd like to add some context and background to our work. In August of 2016, Governor Terry Branstad at the time established the Future Ready Iowa Alliance and established the goal of having 70% of Iowans receiving a post-secondary education, training, or credential by the year 2025. This goal was established in response to the Georgetown University Center on Education and Workforce report that we received about the needs in the state of Iowa. The center report estimated that the state of Iowa will add 162,000 jobs to our economy between 2010 and 2025. That includes jobs due to retirement. The report that found that 68% of all jobs in Iowa will require education and training beyond high school. In response, then Governor Branstad and then Lieutenant Governor, now Governor Reynolds, set Iowa's goal at 70% of our workforce attaining these post-secondary credentials. And they created the Future Ready Iowa Alliance to develop strategies to meet this goal. Where are we now? 58.4% of Iowans have completed training beyond high school. That 58% is broken out based on the attainment level that Iowans have reached, about 7% with trade certifications or vocational training, 16% with an associate's degree, and 35% with an undergraduate or postgraduate degree. To increase Iowans' credentials with credentials from 58% to 70%, over 127,000 Iowans will need to attain additional credentials. And through an analysis of our population, the degree attainment by different sectors, the needs of employers, the Alliance projects that we will need 51,000 adults 25 years or older who have no prior post-secondary education to be credentialed. 35,000 returning adults, those who have some post-secondary education, will need to finish their credential or degree. And 41,000 traditional age students will need to complete a degree or credential. And to reach that goal, we will need to have more of our high school students moving on to post-secondary education than we currently have. The major gap that we have right now in Iowa's workforce is a middle skills gap. Over half of Iowa's workforce is concentrated in these jobs. They include industry sectors such as construction, manufacturing, healthcare, and transportation. These occupations pay between $30,000 and $60,000 a year. Much of the training for these jobs includes certificates, registered apprenticeships, or programs provided by employers. The key and the issue that we need to address is to match the training with the industry sector so that individuals are workforce ready. Areas with the largest need in our region include occupations with math or computer skills, construction workers, legal occupations, healthcare practitioners and healthcare support, building grounds and maintenance, and personal care occupations such as childcare workers, fitness trainers, and cosmetologists. We have all heard this repeatedly, and many of you are business folks in the community, so you experience this on a regular basis. Employers simply cannot find sufficient numbers of employees who have the skills that they need to meet the empty positions that they have in our state. In response to this, the governor's office created the Future Ready Iowa Alliance, a partnership of business, community, education, government, nonprofits, and community members. The alliance included over 50 members from across the state, with several members from the Cedar Valley, and I see that some of these folks are here. Jeff Weld, if you remember, was the executive director of the Governor's STEM Academy, housed at UNI. Representative Walt Rogers, Steve Duss, the former executive director of the Greater Cedar Valley Alliance and Chamber, Senator Bill Dotzler, Mayor Quentin Hart, President Linda Allen of Hawkeye Community College, and myself. The task of the Future Ready Iowa Alliance was to develop strategies to meet that 70% goal. We had 1 year to develop and vet these strategies. The process was very collaborative and inclusive. It was data informed. We brought in experts to speak to the Alliance on several occasions. We looked at best practices in other states, what was working, what wasn't working, and ultimately we developed 5 strategies. The first strategy is to provide resources for Iowans to attain the needed credentials. This includes a last dollar scholarship to cover the gap in the cost of tuition for an associate's degree in a high demand area, a grant program for Iowans who have more than half of the credits for a bachelor's degree in a high demand field, and then also, I think most interestingly, an incentive fund for local businesses and industries to provide support for credentialing, to be matched by the state. The second strategy focuses on career counseling and mentoring for those who want to return to school or attain a credential. This support would also include programs at the high school level to improve skill development and career readiness. Think for a moment about career and technical education in the Waterloo School District. Think about the Center for Advanced Professional Studies in the Cedar Falls School District. And then pause for a moment and think how remarkable it is that students who are in Waterloo who are interested in the CAPS program get to participate across school district lines. And the students who are in Waterloo who want to participate, they can go across lines. This is really remarkable, the collaboration that we currently have in the Cedar Falls. Strategy 3 includes an expansion of work-based learning programs, including especially apprenticeships that allow individuals to work and learn at the same time and ultimately attain a credential. It also includes an expansion of internships at high schools and college levels. In addition to providing Iowans with the skills they need to fill the current gaps in middle schools, we also need to increase our readiness for the future of employment. In 2016, Iowa Workforce Development created a list of high-demand jobs in the state through 2024. Most of these occupations, which include research analysis, information security analysts, financial advisors, require a bachelor's degree. Other areas of high growth that require graduate or professional degrees include nurse practitioners, occupational therapists, and physical therapists. We expect to see 25 to 40% growth in these occupations through 2024. As knowledge and information have become embedded into our daily lives in tangible ways, The source of distinction for the future thriving of economic systems will shift to innovation. That is, the use of information to rethink what we do, how we do it, and more importantly, why we do it. I want to suggest that this shift is already occurring in Northeast Iowa and that it depends upon three principles. First, our community must learn to think like an ecosystem. An innovation economy depends upon an environment of collaboration that grows our emotional intelligence and our ability to recognize and reinforce our interdependence. Considering our community as an ecosystem means advancing our capacity not for competition, but rather for meaningful relationships that elevate everyone. As we level up, we must make certain that we don't leave anyone in the basement. Second, our community will thrive if we elevate our understanding and commitment to diversity and inclusion. How many people heard Dr. Nika White at the Cedar Valley Conference on Economic Inclusion a couple weeks ago? Raise your hand. A lot of us were there. She suggested that we needed to shift our understanding of diversity and inclusion work from that of an obligation, how my organization can advance diversity and inclusion, to an opportunity, how diversity and inclusion can advance my organization or community. Diversity must be understood broadly to include not just racial, ethnic, gender, and sexual differences, but also political, religious, generational, and other differences. If we consider our community as an ecosystem committed to diversity and inclusion, we know that we must learn to walk across our differences, to open our minds to new ways of thinking and believing by putting aside what we think we already know. Such an approach to working together becomes the source of creativity, which I would suggest is the third principle. Our community will thrive if we commit ourselves to creativity, which will happen if we balance expertise with experimentation. In a podcast called The Hidden Brain, Francis Gino notes that when we become an expert in something, we learn to fall back on what is familiar. Patterns of thinking develop. We become comfortable. The world is known. That's great. We advance all sorts of issues in that kind of a way. But we also then become less innovative, less creative, and less engaged with the world around us. When we blend our expertise with experimentation, magic happens. To nurture experimentation within our routines and patterns disrupts how we see the world, allowing us to be more mindful and present, open to other people and other ideas, and more engaged with the creative unfolding of the world around us. To fully embrace the innovation economy means building collaborations and partnerships across all sectors. We are in the midst of a major shift in how we do business, of how we create the business and industry of the future, how we create educational systems for that future, and how we train the workforce to be prepared for constant change and innovation. Ronald Heifetz of the Harvard School of Business suggests that leaders are confronted with two types of issues: technical problems and adaptive challenges. Technical problems can be solved with the information, the skills, the processes that we have in place. They are routine, but adaptive challenges, the kinds of challenges that we are facing today, require something more. They require us to change our values and our beliefs. They require us to walk across differences, to think about each other as colleagues, not competitors, and to embrace the entire community. For these types of challenges will not be solved through processes and systems. They are solved through relationships. The innovation economy cannot be created by thinking outside the box. When you think outside the box, you still start with the box. It is one we will create by thinking where there are no boxes. This will allow us to recognize the challenges that individuals are facing in the Cedar Valley, to recognize the challenges that we face as a community, and to see these challenges as new ways, opportunities for new ways of thinking, new ways of believing, new ways of working together. Today, we continue to do the good work of building collaborations and partnerships, of surfacing challenges so that we can meet them together and create an economy that works for everyone. Our summit will end with an action forum where we will ask everyone to identify challenges and think about how those challenges can be turned into opportunities. And then we will ask you to sign up in groups so that we can work on these challenges for the next several years. This is, I believe, a crucible moment, a moment that can lead to the creation of something new and something different, not based on competition, but on collaboration, not based on one sector thinking, but on ecosystem thinking, not based on deficit and scarcity thinking, but on abundance and richness thinking. Today, we have the opportunity to provide a foundation so that people 50 years from now will look back at this moment and they will say, a group of people came together in the Cedar Valley region and they provided the foundation for our success now. We have accomplished much to provide this foundation, but we still have much to do. Thank you so much for coming. I very much look forward to the conversation today. And right now, I'd like to turn it over to Director Beth Townsend, who will talk about the workbook that you have in front of you.
Well, good morning. It is so great to be with you here in Cedar Valley. This is we are having our 17th and 18th summit today. We started with the first summit in Muscatine, and we're ending here in the Cedar Valley and the Cedar Rapids area. Over 2,500 Iowans participated in the summits. So as you can imagine, everyone is excited about this work. Everyone recognizes that the work needs to be done. And what's truly inspiring is seeing working groups coming out of these summits and the connections that are made at the summits between businesses and educators, between community partners and stakeholders who'd never sat down and talked about things that they can do collaboratively that are going to help us close this skills gap. So I applaud you for being here. I was glad to hear that Jim remind you that you're going to be asked to make a commitment when this is done, because the only way that we're going to close this skills gap is if we all work together. One of the things that you'll note about your playbook is, number one, this is a notebook, and it is designed in a format that is meant to be used. We do not want you to do what you do with most conference materials that you get. You put it on a bookshelf, you dust it, and in a few years you throw it away, never to be reviewed again. This is designed for you to use on a regular basis. In fact, we hope that you use it so much that it falls apart. It will be on our website, on your Cedar Valley page, so if you do wear it out, you can always download and print it again. But all of the playbooks have been designed for each unique area that held a summit. So there is region-specific information within the notebook to help you make data-driven decisions. There's information that we'll be discussing regarding labor market information from the state of Iowa and in the Cedar Valley area. We have some discussion points for you to consider and some paths that you can take in terms of starting a conversation, ideas to think about, ways to think about those, and then places to write those down that are unique to your community and identify those opportunities that you see that you can participate in. The playbook also has resources from across the state and your local area where you can go to help you with the work after today, that you can rely on and look to for updated information every day. Once the summit is done, we have created a web page for each community that's held a summit that's on the futurereadyiowa.gov website. And on that page, you will be able to upload information from your summit, from your working groups. You can go to the different summits that were held around the state of Iowa, and you can see what other communities talked about, what they are working on, some ideas that they came up with, and areas they've identified that would be good areas for them to work on. So I would encourage you to spend some time on the futurereadyiowa.gov website, particularly on the summit pages, as they reflect some of the work that's been done and could give you some good starting points for your continued work. I do want to applaud the Cedar Valley area. As Jim indicated, this area has been leading the way and has started this work much sooner than other communities around the state. And that's going to put you in an even better position to succeed at this work. So thank you for coming. I am encouraged and I am excited to hear what comes out of the summit. I know it's going to be great. I know that the commitment is here and the energy is here to get things done. One number that I would point out to you in your notebook that I would like you to keep in mind, everything that we're doing in the state of Iowa right now to close that skills gap and to get more Iowans credentialed is really fantastic work. It is moving the needle 0.3 to 1% per year. That's not going to get us to 70%. So we have to figure out how to do more and figure out what's going to help us produce results faster. Because all the great work that we're doing right now isn't moving the needle quite fast enough. And I know that your work here today is going to help speed that up and expand those areas of opportunity in your Cedar Valley area. So thank you for coming today. I look forward to your participation, and let's get future ready. Let's get Iowa future ready.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend. I'd like to welcome Bob Frederick up, and he is going to introduce our panelists. So the first panelists of the day will be an employer panel, how we will frame the future and the world of work in the Cedar Valley. Bob Frederick is the director of UNI's Career Services Center and has been with us and working in the Cedar Valley on workforce development for many years. Bob.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Bob Frederick, and I'm so glad that you took the time out of your busy schedules to be here. We have a panel that's going to come forward. Come on up, Andy. We have, when you think about the world of work, and this is actually my area that I like to focus on and do research on. You think about the world of work, today is really about the funnel from a macro view to a statewide view to a regional view. And this panel now is the transition into that discussion about our region and how we want the Cedar Valley to be successful in moving forward. In my area of research and work, again, looking at the big picture of what does a future of work look like, I've spent a lot of time and looked at a lot of literature to get to a place of believing that the Cedar Valley in many ways is ahead of a lot of other places, but we are not just competing against other regions in the state. There are it's really a global economy that we're talking about, and it's a global education system, and that makes it a really unique time in this transformation of what the 21st century world of work looks like. Students often ask me, will there be jobs? The answer to that is yes. But if you think about a job today and in the future, the jobs will be there. The kind of work the job does will be transformed. In fact, much literature is really leading to this idea that if you had 10 different kinds of work that you're doing, 6 of those 10 will either go away or be transformed. So how do you prepare people for that? How do you help people get ready for that? When you think about 4 million boomers retiring every single year to be replaced by 2.5 million Gen Zs, how do you deal with that? And suddenly things like AI and intelligent augmentation make sense. When you think what Thomas Friedman said in his latest book, Thank You for Being Late, he said, today's graduates from high school and community colleges and universities are literally stepping onto an escalator, but they're walking up a down escalator. In the past, in our lifetimes, in our parents' lifetimes, you could walk up a staircase of a career and stop at any part of that landing and stay there for 30 years. That's not possible today, because when you stop today, you are literally declining in your knowledge, your skills, and your abilities. So it's an imperative for us to create lifelong learners, because being able to learn throughout their 50-year work career lifespan is critically important to the future. It's critically important to us as well in the Cedar Valley. Our connectivity of community, education, and business has never been more important. And that's why it's really exciting today to not only have these employers here, but to have so many educators here and community members here. This is the work that has to be done. It's necessary to be done. Today we have Butch Kelly. He's from HR from GMT Corporation. We have Melissa Card from Human Resources from Power Engineering and Manufacturing. Andy Van Fleet is a managing partner at Visual Logic. and Sonia Thrall is the Chief Innovation Officer at Western Home Communities. We've prepared some questions, and we may or may not get through all of them, but this is meant to be a seed to launch a conversation that will continue throughout this day and after today, as Dr. Wolpart said. So while we are going to talk about some things, it's not all things, and we hope that in the breakout sessions especially, where we have more time to actually dialogue, you'll jump right in with your thoughts and your ideas, your recommendations, and the things that you know will be helpful to us. With that, I'm going to now take the mic, sit down in our Star Trek chairs. Thank you, Sam. And it's a little more casual now, so we can the formal part of the meeting is over. So let me move around here. I love these chairs. Please grab a mic. We talked about what kinds of topics we wanted to address this morning. And we came up with 3 basic topical areas. The first one is just the basics. The second one is the transforming landscape focus. And then last, the partnerships and alliances as a focus point for our discussion this morning. So the first question we came up with was, what are your current industry needs with respect to knowledge, skills, and abilities of the future employee? And with that, I'll turn it over to our experts. But first, let's thank them for being here this morning. Andy, I'll start with you. What do you think those needs are going to be? What are you looking at?
Well, in our line of business and user experience work that we do at Visual Logic, we need creative people who are both creative and have the skill set of creative individuals, but also are strategic thinkers. And so if they exhibit those 2 attributes, then I know that we have a good chance of bringing those 2 things together for the future of our business to help solve really complex problems for our customers. So what we're looking for when we're evaluating new potential employees is, are they creative thinkers and are they strategic thinkers? One test that we do in order to be able to see that is we give everybody that's applying for a job an assignment to redesign an ATM machine. And so what that allows us to do is to evaluate their creativity and their strategic thinking. So those are 2 really key important items that we're looking for when we're evaluating talent.
Awesome. Awesome. Melissa,
I'm next.
go for it.
I would say in the manufacturing field, what we're looking for is math, of course, and problem solvers. Manufacturing every day is changing, and we need students to, I guess, know how to handle those types of situations and have ideas and stuff like that. I'll
Sonia.
let Butch elaborate more on that in the manufacturing field.
At Western Home Communities, one of the things that we're looking for is very specific professional training, starting at a certificate of a CNA level, all the way up to different nursing levels. But one of the important things for us also is for people to be able to communicate. Our main business is people taking care of people. Mm-hmm. And when the younger generation only knows how to talk in text speak, it's very hard for the message to get through between the employee and the resident. So both the training and the communication skills.
Awesome. Butch?
With manufacturing, like Melissa said, we're looking for foundational skills, fundamental skills. Can you solve problems? Do you have some basic math skills? Can you have some basic problem-solving skills? Can you read? Can you listen? Can you communicate? Because we don't expect you to come in knowing how to do specific jobs within machining or welding, maybe assembly. But you do have to have the ability to listen to the person who's training you, to follow directions, to come to work on a regular basis, to be respectful. Those types of things, you don't always learn them, growing up or going to school. You should, but you don't. But those are the basics that we're looking for, and we can teach them then what they need to know. Really would prefer to have somebody who's come through a training program at Hawkeye or UNI, other technical college, because the technical skills do take time to learn. It's a trade skill. Trade skills take time. Just like sports, acting, performing, you don't just walk out on stage and do things, you have to practice them. So a person who has the ability to put those good things into play but use them over time is really critical for us.
It's interesting that all four of you have talked about maybe some specific things, but things that you didn't talk about are interesting to me as well. So for example, what do you feel about the importance of a specific major? We have career fairs every year. In fact, the person who runs our career fair is here today. And in the past probably 10 years in particular, we've seen an adjustment of what they need. Like if you're going to be an accountant, you have to have an accounting degree. If you're going to be a teacher, you have a teaching degree. But about 64% of employers that come to recruit at UNI, they seek all majors. Is that what you're seeing too? Is it that? I mean, and Andy, in particular, I'm thinking about you with what you said. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. When we market for our internship, we market to 5 different colleges. So it's MIS, CIS, psychology, graphic design, and then IXDS. Honestly, it's less about which department they come from and more about the skills that I mentioned earlier, the creative thinking and the strategic thinking. But to supplement what the university had done to prepare them for a career, we also developed our own UX Academy and our own user experience internship, which we teach 24 modules to the students about UX, everything from research to usability testing, design, prototype development. And they take those skills and they put them into use in an actual, both in client work and then also with a fake assignment. But what we're looking for is students from UNI that have a great foundation that then we know we can take this skill set and elevate that skill set a little bit through our UX Academy that we've created.
I throw it out to the other 3 too. I mean, when you're thinking about the preparation piece of that, right, educationally, what's the driver there? What are you thinking about with that?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, something I found interesting. We're not a very big company. We have about 57 employees. And out on the shop floor, I think I found out 5 of them have teaching degrees. And they're all machinists now. So, yeah, we're not limited to any type of degree. We're just limited to somebody that wants to learn and have a job.
Right.
So we have positions that definitely need to have the healthcare emphasis and that kind of training. But we also have a number of positions that so one position that we have is called a household coordinator. And that person is responsible in the nursing level of care for everything that's non-clinical. So looking at the food, looking at the activities, all of those things. And those people have many different backgrounds.
And I would say that within manufacturing, we're going to look primarily for that person with the 2-year degree, specifically in CNC machining technology, welding, industrial maintenance, automation. And there, I think we need to have people coming through those curriculums. They've got the foundation, they've got the fundamentals. From there, they can learn more, and as Melissa said, you know, even if they come in with a different degree, they're going to be able to learn and they're going to be able to grow maybe faster than some other individuals who don't have that, because they recognize the importance of the education and the training that they've already gotten and how that might serve them well in the future.
Awesome. So there, the discussion earlier when Dr. Wolpart was up here, he talked about specifically there are more positions open than there are people available to fill those positions. And let's talk about that at the local level. You know, what are you seeing with respect to your employment needs? First part. Second part would be, and how are you trying to fill that gap? So that's a 2-parter, and Butch, let's start with you.
GMT is about 275 employees. Over the next 5 years, I can see easily 50 people retiring. And it'll be, you know, a few here, a few there, but over the next, you know, like I said, 5 years, I can see 50 people needing to be replaced as machinists, as welders, as managers, as supervisors, forklift drivers, you name it. You know, we're going to have openings to fill because of that. Another probably 20 to 30% of the workforce will leave during that 5 to 10 year period just because they find a better job. Maybe it's not the best fit for them. They want to move on. They move out of the area. Any number of different reasons that they may leave. So, you know, I can see pretty easily where, you know, 100 people to 125 people are going to need to be replaced over the next 5 to 10 years. What we're doing to do that is we're working with Hawkeye. We've hired an individual, Jamie Detmer, who's with us now to work on an apprenticeship program, pre-apprenticeships with high schools, third parties. You know, we're Jamie Kramer, who is our HR manager now, is doing a great job of really trying to broaden out and find more people in different areas. And that's what we have to do. We have to cast that net quite a bit wider than we have in the past.
So when I came to Western Home Communities in 2012, we had 400 employees. Today we have over 1,000 right here in Cedar Falls. And that kind of growth really stretches everybody, and so we have felt a lot of those growing pains, and it has not always been easy. One of the things that we have done to meet the needs that we have is in 2015, we started offering our own Prepare to Care class. We hire people to come to class. They're in class for 3 weeks where they have both classroom time and clinical time. And then we pay them to work in a non-certified position until they can pass their CNA certification. And then we put them into a job. We have kept about half of those employees, which might not seem like a great percentage, but it's half of those people are people we wouldn't have without that program. As I've been working with people nationally, one of the things that we would love to find is a way to be able to then offer some of those people the steps to become an LPN. So we still utilize LPNs. The hospital systems don't so much, but for us that's a great next step. And it really only takes about a year worth of school, and we would love to find a way to be able to let them take classes and do their clinical times right on our campus, because then we would continue to be able to use them. That's just one idea.
Thank you.
We use Hawkeye a lot for our recruiting. We use Iowa Workforce. Recently, there's a shortage for machinists. We just grabbed 3 kids off the street. They were they were just graduated high school. They were still living with their parents, and one of their parents worked with us, and they're like, give these guys a job. So we're like, all right, what do we got to lose? So we brought these 3 kids in, we threw them on machines, and it's going good. You know, if we can't hire machinists that have the experience, we'll just build them. So that's something that's been working good for us. We just took a chance.
Awesome.
To help fill our talent pipeline with our internship program, we utilize the IEDA grant money, and that's a fantastic program. You know, the interns get $15 an hour, and then they get also, we work with University of Northern Iowa to get college credit for them as well. So they get $15 an hour, we pay $7.50 out of pocket, the grant picks up the rest of it, and that's a fantastic program for them. So we usually have 2 interns at least on staff with that program. And then we've been in talks with Hawkeye Community College to utilize the 260E program as well. So we're not quite there yet because it does take a hiring commitment of 6 to 7 people over. And we're a small shop. We have 20 people in our design firm. But it's a great lever for us to be able to utilize once we're ready to hire 6 to 7 people over a 2-year period. Then we'll start to engage with Hawkeye's 260E program, which we're very excited about.
That program is awesome.
Endorsement right there. Perfect. So let's move into this idea of transforming landscapes then, and with respect to your areas. How quickly are things changing, though? How quickly is the work changing? Are the jobs changing? Is your industry changing? And how do you see us being able to keep up with that? And Sonia, let's start with you.
So I'll start with a few statistics.
Okay.
Most of you probably know that there is a nursing shortage. That's not new information. This year, the World Health Organization said that there are about 4 million nurses in the country, and that we will need another 1 million by 2020. That's not that far away. You also know that America is aging. Every day, starting in 2010, 10,000 people in the United States turn 65. Every day. Every day until the year 2030. Turn 65. That will change the way our industry works. And that's something that we have thought about. Now, that means that the oldest of the baby boomers this year turned 73. Our average move-in age is 83. So we know that we're still another decade away from really feeling the pressure that will hit us at some point in time. But we know that we have to get ready for that. In Iowa, that number grows, the number of people who are over 85 grows from 2013, there were 78,000. By 2030, there will be 120,000, more than 50% more. So we have to figure out how to deal with that. One of the ways that we are working on that is, well, there's 2 ways. We are increasing our at-home care. We know that many people will want to stay home and will want to stay home longer and will want to stay home through the end of their life. And so we started our At Home with Western Home in 2013, and that continues to grow. The other important factor that we know we have to work with is technology. And technology that we use where we are in our buildings, but also technology that we put out in the homes. So a pilot project that we worked on this year is a product called Billy. There are 6 motion and movement sensors that are put in the home that are attached to a hub. It collects information and sends it to an app. The app is available to the adult children. So the adult children check in on average 5 times a day for 20 seconds a time. They look at that and they say, oh, Mom got up today. Oh, Mom opened the fridge. She probably ate breakfast. And they can just keep track of, so that really is a step before what we have traditionally been able to offer care. And it helps bring the family members to have them be part of the care circle rather than just the expectation, well, I'm going to bring Mom and you'll provide all of the care. And we just know that all of those things have to increase.
That is huge. The Internet of Things now is part of your world, right? Yeah. Melissa, what do you think? The
I would say
transformations, yeah.
Technology in manufacturing is expensive. So we probably aren't as far as maybe some other companies. A lot of our machines are old, which means that we need a lot of like the industrial maintenance kids out of Hawkeye to help keep our old machines running. The technology advances that we have are mostly in our office with our IT department, and they can help make us programs to help the guys out on the shop floor realize what jobs they have coming and how to prioritize it and stuff like that. But as far as technology, that's what we got.
Sonia, I used the 10,000 people turning 65 every day with high school kids, because I want them to know that with that many people turning, and I say it's 66, 65, 64, 63, every day, 10,000 people. And what that means, I would hope would mean to them to some degree, is that there will be opportunities. As people are retiring out of the workforce, there will be opportunities, but they have to prepare for those opportunities with training, with education, with development on their own, with the companies, with the schools, et cetera. The other thing about changing technology, and I think ours is pretty incremental in most cases. If you look at a car today, if you look at a tractor today, you know, they don't look like they looked 50 years ago, but they were gradual changes, and so the internals, what GMT does for companies, they're very small, they're not revolutionary, they're more evolutionary. But I did read an article the other day about GM. GM's trying to, they may put out a package here very soon to try to get 17,000 primarily engineers and salaried people that have 12 years or more out of their workforce. And why are they doing that? They're doing it because they're going to transition more rapidly to driverless cars and electric cars. The people that they have in place today don't have the skills to engineer them. And the people that they're looking for are the newer graduates, are the more upskilled graduates that can design those. So, and that has a trickle-down effect to a lot of companies that maybe it's GM, maybe it's Ford, maybe it's other large companies, but that will have a trickle-down effect into areas like the Cedar Valley eventually.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Andy?
Yeah, that's a great segue into our industry. You know, we're in the experience economy now. You know, we have just come through, I think, the age of information where we're still overloaded with information, but now we're in the experience economy trying to figure out how do we make sense of all that information. In our industry right now, we have 1 million UX professionals worldwide. And if you want to look at an interesting study, this was done by Jacob Nielsen, and it's Jacob with a K. He did a 100-year study on the UX professional industry. It's a 100-year study. 70 years of those are actual information from 1950 till today, and then 30 years of those are predictions. And so he starts out with 2 people in the Bell Labs. Their first user experience assignment was to go from the rotary dial phone to the touch-tone phone that we know as today. And what he did is he looked at the first 33 years for UX professionals from like 1950 to 1983. It grew from those 2 people to 1,000 people. And the next 33 years, it grew from 1,000 people to 1 million people. And so what he's saying is if you keep that trajectory going, it's going to go from 1 million UX professionals to 100 million UX professionals in 2050. I have a hard time getting behind that number because it seems awfully high, but even if you've said half of that, and it went to 50 million UX professionals. His argument is, at 100 million people, that's 1% of the world population making usable products for the other 99% of us, which I think we could all get behind.
Yeah, and that's why, again, in Friedman's book, he talks about, we can't think about like the Cedar Valley. We have to think there's 7.6 billion people, all who are possible to work for you or work with you, right? Even in a contingent labor environment, or they can work for you but not directly work for you. Like Boeing has done that, where they've sent out projects where they call it a jump ball. They'll put out a thing to be basically crowdsourced, solved. They have people submit their proposals to solve the problem. They get the solution figured out, and then they pay them. But at no point did they ever work for Boeing. They just did work for Boeing. And so you're right. I mean, this idea of 100 million seems like a big number, but in 7.6 billion, it's maybe not as big as we think it is. Let's move into a little bit of a discussion here about then what role do you see education and community-based organizations like here in the Cedar Valley playing in this evolving 21st century employment ecosystem? And maybe not what you see, but also maybe what we need to be seeing, right? So Butch, what do you think?
I loved Azim's video.
Awesome.
I just think that is something that schools, AEA, need to be doing to, and companies also in the area. We need to be working with schools more in promotional materials like that. If we want to pull kids into manufacturing at some point in time, into healthcare, into other fields, we've got to give them some jazz, I guess. I don't know what else to say, some bling with it. And that I thought was a great video, because kids that can do that and can get other kids excited about a particular field, we've seen for a long time, we need to get other kids, we need to get parents, we need to get faculty, again, focusing on manufacturing, knowledgeable about the careers that are available, the fact that they are good paying careers, that there are pathways upward. We haven't done a good enough job with that, but I think, seeing a video like that is pretty exciting, for me anyway.
Yeah.
I would say, I agree, we need to get into schools, and we need to get into schools in the middle school age if we can, simply to expose kids to what opportunities are out there, and for them to understand that you can start in one area, you can grow while you're working in the area. That's one of the things that I think is great about the nursing career field, is that it can be very incremental, and you can work and go to school at the same time. And as I said before, I'd love to find a way that we could actually do that, where there were classes that people could take to get their LPN, to get their RN while they're working at the level that they are licensed at. I think too that both for manufacturing and for the nursing care in particular, they sometimes come with a stigma. And when parents talk to their kids, they don't necessarily say, this is an area that you should pursue. For whatever reason, they aren't looked on as great jobs, or they might not be as exciting as the place where Andy is, but they provide good services to people products and services that are needed by our community. And I think that it would be good to help us change the way we look at, so in my field, the way we look at older adults, to fight against ageism, and just to understand that careers in this field are good careers and are helpful careers.
I gotta say, I am super excited about the Career Center, not only as an employer, but as a parent. I am excited for my kids now to be in the Waterloo school system because of the chances that they have when they get into high school to do this Career Center and to sample what it would be like. We have hosted 2 kids to do machining at Power Engineering, so they chose that Career Center or career path, and then they came and worked at Power Engineering for a semester. And one of them wanted to be an engineer, and he worked there as a machinist. At the end of his experience, he goes, I don't think I want to go to Iowa State to be an engineer anymore. I just want to be a machinist. And the machinist that he was working with was like, no, just go to school, be the engineer. You can always, come back and do the machining. But I thought it was really neat that a kid was like impressed by being a CNC machinist, that he was going to forego his 4-year degree as an engineer. But I think it's a good experience for the kids to get out there and get hands-on and try these fields and get an idea.
Yeah, I agree with Melissa. The Cedar Valley is to be commended for the amazing work that they've done, both at West High and at Cedar Falls. The opportunities for the kids today are amazing. I mean, I sat through freshman orientation with my 8th grader, and they were talking about the different options that they have at the Career Center, and I was just blown away. And just that work, it wasn't lost on me, because I know it's hard to put a program like that in place, and I'm just really thankful for that for the next generation of employees that are going to be coming out of the Cedar Valley. There's a lot of great work and momentum that's going, and so the Cedar Valley should be commended for that.
Awesome. And Jeff Frost is here if you want to ask some questions about. Where you at, Jeff? Over here. Yeah. So if you have not had a chance yet to see the Waterloo Career Center and the Waterloo Community School District, it's really worth the time to go and see what's going on there. And I'm not taking anything away from the CAPS program in Cedar Falls, which is an outstanding program that we love being a part of. In fact, Provost Wolpart is a part of that on the board there. But so many good things going on with that. So moving a little into some challenging questions here. We got a few minutes left. So when you think about businesses, community, education, and partnerships, how do we close the gap between the different kinds of businesses, so business to business or business to community, business to education? How do we identify and close those gaps? Because clearly we need those partnerships, but is it competitive? Are we trying to, we think we're going to slice the pie smaller and smaller instead of making the pie bigger? I mean, what are the issues here? And I'll just throw it out to anybody who wants to jump on that question.
I think with, in respect to our industry and doing user experience work, there's a couple different programs that we've put into place that help to close the gap. One is our UX internship. So we've had as many as 4 students per academic year or 2 students. I would love to put a lot more students through that UX internship. It's a lot of work on our team. It's a great program for the students, and I think it'd be a great program to look at, like, how can you do something bigger than just 2 or 4 students going through that for an academic year. It's just, they're learning a lot. The other side of that was that we decided that since it was such a successful program at that kind of micro level, that we decided to make a UX Academy out of it. And we had 18 students that went through the UX Academy. And what was great about that is it did become this partnership with local businesses as well. So we decided to, 18 students are learning about user experience. We taught all 24 modules to them over the course of a semester. But what was great is that we went out and sought local businesses that wanted to have us or the students take on a project for them. So we broke the 18 students down into 6 groups of 3 students under the watchful eye of a Visual Logic mentor, and they took on a project from the business side of things. We had 6 different business partners that paid us a small amount to take on a project and start thinking about that. So it was a great partnership from that ecosystem, because there was students from multiple colleges that were attending the UX Academy, and then businesses were also experiencing the values of user experience and having a problem solved for them. So it was a natural fit for us, and we would like to continue thinking about how to make that into a bigger program as well.
Oh, that's great. Others?
Yeah, I think that, within manufacturing, we've had programs in the past that were more successful by numbers. EMC Squared, which stands for Exploring Manufacturing Careers Consortium. A number of various school districts, manufacturers, Hawkeye Community College collaborated to get students into the industrial trades. We sponsored internships. We had classes in the summertime, which we still do with that program. But I think that where we've lacked there is getting out in front of the IT instructors at the high schools, making sure that from a business standpoint, making sure they understand what the needs are, what the opportunities are. I think we can reinvigorate that somehow. I think between the school districts, AEA, and industries, we have to ask each other. We have to ask what we can do, what can be done, what can you do for us. That collaboration is going to be huge, I think. Jeff, no pressure, but I think a collaboration between communication and manufacturing at the Career Center is that's at the foremost of my thoughts anyway. There's some ways to publicize that, I think, and get that out. So like you said, no pressure, but it's there. And we just need to get out there in front of students, faculty, parents. I think we need to do a better job of that.
To kind of piggyback off that, I think with this Career Center, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of like the shop and industrial tech classes and the home ec classes, those are no longer available in the high schools anymore because of the Career Center. So the kids don't get that little sampling, maybe, to dip their toe in the water. So I don't know what we can do about that to like, the kids need something to like test the waters before they commit to entering these programs. Because, correct me if I'm wrong also, this is new to me, if they enter these programs and then they don't like it, they've wasted a whole semester. So I don't know if there's something that we can do to help them test, you know, that's the kind of stuff out.
So I think I've already spoken enough about the education piece that I'd love to see put in place. I think it's also important to remember the communication part. Those skills are just vital to everything that we do. And we know that technology is going to be a huge part moving forward, and having people understand more of how that works and what that looks like, and being less afraid of AI and technology in general.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of AI. It's absolutely necessary. I shared the numbers earlier. That's why it's absolutely necessary. How do we keep it going? How do you keep the momentum going? We have 18 summits across the state of Iowa, and a lot of people are thinking and talking and wanting to do something about this, but it's going to come down to us in our Cedar Valley here. So how do we keep it going? How do we, deal with this idea of not an event, but the beginning of events? What are your thoughts with respect to that?
I think the breakout sessions will help to determine some of that, very honestly. I think if we're truly interested and you're in a breakout session or a team going forward, to be a part of that, be a participant. Again, ask, what can I do? What can be done? How can I get some help doing some of these things? Again, the communication part of it, I think, is huge. And I don't know how to do a lot of those things, but there are instructors, there's AEA, there's other, maybe SHRM can do some things when it comes, again, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's more advanced technology and training, there's got to be some synergies there.
One of my favorite things that I do is be able to bring different teams of people together. So I bring clinical and non-clinical. I also work with people across the country. And it helps to see different perspectives. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is not to be so focused in whatever your area is, whether it's healthcare or something else, but to know that we can learn about innovation from all of the other places across the spectrum and be willing to listen.
I always go back to the parents. We got to find out how to get the parents more information and get them more involved in their kids' education and not just leave it up to them. Because if we do, we're going to have a million YouTubers. I mean, we gotta get the parents more information and let them know that manufacturing's not a bad career and just stuff like that.
I'd run it as a software experiment. I do a bunch of small, innovative experiments just to get things moving, and then maybe develop some sort of a framework to evaluate how are things moving in those experiments. So if you run 10 of them and evaluate those experiments, if you have 2 or 3 of them that seem really great, like they pass criteria, run them, go. I mean, time is of the essence. I would just say start small and just get going.
It's interesting because the speakers that will be coming up after us, they're going to be focused on barriers and some of the things they've been able to do with respect to barrier issues. What do you think are some of the barrier issues we're facing, just real briefly in the last few minutes here? If there was a barrier you'd like to identify and put some energy towards solving, what would it be to your needs as an employer with respect to employees?
Our barrier in manufacturing is always that it's dirty, it's not a good job, and that it's not a career, that you can't make a career out of manufacturing, and you can.
Awesome. Good.
Ageism, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I think I'd probably piggyback on what Melissa said, is that manufacturing isn't what it was even 10 years ago, certainly not 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. There's probably 9 different departments within a small company that support the manufacturing, the operations end of it. And just because you start at that low rung of the ladder doesn't mean that's where you're going to be your whole career. And younger people need to understand that. If they want to be a machinist all their life, which is not, to me, a low rung of the ladder, that's okay. That's all right. That's a good career. We need people to build things, to make things. to fix things, and there's nothing at all wrong with having a whole career of that. But if you do want to get into something more like, it could be supervision, it could be quality, it could be maintenance, it could be logistics, it could be IT, it could be accounting, it could be any number of different things. As long as you can learn and are willing to put in the time and the effort, the opportunities are there.
Andy?
There's a lot of common themes here. I think Sonia said it best with communication, but this is really tangible, but one of the things that I really struggle with is just the shyness of kids. I mean, this is a very tangible thing, but you know, we work on really hard problems, everything from currently we're working on missile defense problems to, you know, helping Feeding America. We're going into big rooms with huge personalities, with, you know, PhDs and very, very smart people. So we've got, when we come in, and that's one thing that we work on over and over and over again with consultants, is going in and asking stupid questions, going in and asking for information that we need. And so that's one thing that's hard for us to get across to students is it's okay to ask a dumb question. You got to phrase it the right way, right? But you can't just sit there and say nothing. And so I'm endlessly amazed when I, you know, talk with students or have an opportunity to engage with them, just how shy people are. Yeah. It's like you really have value to add if you just allow yourself to add that value. So that's something that's very tangible, and I would just say if this room could focus on that, I think that would be a benefit to the industry as well.
Excellent, excellent. Last question and we're done, all right? What excites you the most about the future of work? We talked a lot about a lot of issues here, but what excites you the most, so we can end on a positive note?
I'll start with that because I know that we, in the days ahead, have the opportunity to impact many, many, many lives. Not only the lives of older adults, but also their families and our employees and their families, and that's exciting.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you.
I've had a chance to go to some high schools with Lacey Westendorf here recently, and one of the things I like to bring up is that as we sit here in a classroom, I tell them my first job that I had in 1974, we had a room this size, maybe twice this size, and this is our computer room. And then I hold up the smartphone. There's more computing power here than was in a whole room. And that excites me because if in 50 years we've gone from a room to holding it in your hand, what's the next 50 going to look like? That to me is exciting. And that should excite kids too, because they don't have the advantage of the perspective that older people do, or they haven't seen, obviously they can't have seen some of those things that older people have seen, but if they could, they would know that, wow, sky's the limit.
Awesome.
In our industry, it's our job to engineer out the complexity out of a product, right? So what I'm really excited about is the problems are getting more and more challenging, and we need smarter and smarter people that have the skill sets to be able to handle that complexity, because the way that we look at it is complexity is like a teeter-totter. You can't decrease the volume underneath the teeter-totter no matter which position the teeter-totter's in. Complexity is on one side that has to be handled by the product team, the end user's on the other side. So if the product team can't figure out the complexity, it just pushes the complexity over to the end user. There's a lot of complex problems that are happening today and in the future, and I'm really excited about that. And the workforce is going to be coming in to help resolve all that complexity. So,
awesome. Great.
I'm just excited in general. I'm excited for kids to, pick a career and love it and not view it as a job and be excited about going to work and, take pride in the product that they're building and that they're helping contribute to the whole world. Because a lot of us have products that, they're not just here in the Cedar Valley. We got products that are all over the world, and I'm just excited about being excited.
Well, let's hope we can keep that excitement going for the rest of the day today for sure. So please join me in thanking our panel this morning. And with that, I turn it back to Deborah. You want that? Yeah. Good.
It is with great pleasure that I get to introduce the next session of Overcoming Barriers. If you notice today, I'm the only one that came in here with a barrier because I cannot stand behind this podium because I'm too short. So, I would like to introduce Nate Claiborne. Nate currently serves as the Business and Career Development Professional with the Cedar Falls CAPS program. Nate and I, about 2 years ago, served on Mayor Hart's Summer Advisory Board program for summer jobs with youth. And Nate had the opportunity to travel to Kalamazoo, Michigan, and meet our next two speakers for the morning. So it is with great pleasure I introduce Nate.
Good morning. You didn't steal all my thunder, Deborah. So, as Deborah said, a couple of years ago, I was working with Mayor Hart and our McElroy Trust to come up with the Summer Youth Jobs Initiative, and in talking to a colleague, an industry colleague of mine, and then friends with Brian and Luke up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, there was a program that he introduced me to from the Urban Alliance called Momentum. And as we were trying to figure out what that program was going to look like here, we started looking at that, and pre-employment was a big thing. So we do have help in work of trying to help people find jobs, get jobs, but how do you keep jobs? You know, it's the pre-employment piece that really becomes important for people to retain jobs and know what they're doing once they get hired. So when you look at obstacles, and that's what we're going to get into here today and then in our sessions this afternoon, I became a little more aware of the 6 big obstacles that we get into when it comes to housing and transportation and childcare, criminal background, drug abuse, education, or even lack of education. And there's more that can really come through there. But when you get into that core, it creates some problems trying to get hired. Their program, they'll talk more about if you've got 2 or more obstacles that they get into. That's what they get into trying to support. When you're in the Cedar Valley, we got 2.4% unemployment. And it gets even higher when you get into the minority ranks. And we've got a 67% workforce participation rate. So that is the worst in the state. But when you look at trying to get some of those people that aren't working or able to work to get to work, we can start correcting some of the challenges that we have here in the Cedar Valley. So I want to welcome up Luke Kay, because I'm going to mess up his last name, and Brian Parsons. Ethan Wakeman, who's my colleague with CAPS, kept calling him Luke Bryant. So they won't be doing any country singing today, but they've got a proven model when it comes to underemployment as well as unemployment that they've had a lot of success here the last few years in Kalamazoo. Let's welcome not Luke Bryant, but Brian and Luke.
Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Oh, that was kind of weak. I got to tell you, we've been instructed that we have to bring energy, but I think you guys have to bring some too. So how you guys doing today? Yeah, it's a choice, right? Okay. So we're from Kalamazoo. My name's Brian. This is Luke, just so you don't mix us up. And Kalamazoo is just a little bit further north, I think, in the map than you guys are here. And one of the things that we do in our Midwestern town is around this time of the year, we have a little bit of a competition, I think, to see who can turn on the thermostat last, right? To see who can hold out the longest. I think you guys are winning, just so you know. We came here and we're like, whoever controls the thermostat outside, you need to turn it on. It's a little colder than it is where we are at, so we just want to start with that a little bit. And so James told us that we actually have to just stay behind this podium back here, and so, no, I'm just kidding. He didn't say, he actually instructed us just the opposite. And so we might walk around a little bit, so please bear with us. If you're on your phones, we might read the text behind you or something like that, you know, so please bear with us on that. So, Luke, I think we're going to start with you.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, my name's Luke Kwiaczynski, not K. You can understand why people don't get up in front of a group of people and try to pronounce that. In all my years of being introduced, I don't think anybody has ever pronounced my name correctly. So I have that record going, and Nate, you didn't try, so I appreciate that. That sets it up and it makes it easier. But we got in, we flew in yesterday. We had an opportunity to drive around the area, and I just want to say you guys have a ton going on. Everywhere we looked, there was construction equipment, there was major manufacturers, there was businesses, there was growth. You know, Nate was driving around, he's like, here's how many people work here, here's how many people work here, and I'm comparing it to Kalamazoo, like that tour that we went on took an hour and a half of driving around and seeing all the development. In Kalamazoo, that probably would have taken maybe 30 minutes. Just to put it in perspective, you guys have a lot going on. And hearing the tone of the talks today, the collaboration, the grassroots, there's a lot of things that you guys are doing really right here that are going to set you up for success. And we couldn't be more excited to be here. I want to start off with a little bit of a story to put things in perspective. This picture, it's a little bit hard to see, but this was at one of our graduations that we had about 4 weeks ago. Now, up there on the stage, there's 14 individuals. And between those 14 individuals, there was over 100 barriers. So those barriers that Nate mentioned, the lack of housing, lack of transportation, lack of childcare, criminal backgrounds, substance abuse. Between those 14 people, there were over 100 barriers. Now, this graduation took place about 10 days after they completed the program. They had completed 9 weeks of workforce development, 6 weeks soft skills, 3 weeks technical skills. And at this graduation, they stand up on stage and they're smiling. And one of the reasons that they're smiling is 75% of them were already employed. So 100 barriers, 9 weeks, 75% already employed. Some of them first job, some of them returning to the workforce. But what we have done and what we want to talk about today is how do we overcome those barriers? How do we create a system where individuals that have been marginalized or pushed to the fringe have the opportunity to re-enter the workforce? And so the Momentum program, Brian's going to talk to you a little bit about, and we're going to jump back and forth, and sometimes we get excited, and so as we go, we're going to be telling stories, and we're probably going to be interrupting each other just a little bit. But Brian's going to give you a little bit, a few nuggets of the stats, so you guys know that this program works, and then we're going to get into how we did it, and what the steps are and how we can set this up here.
So the Momentum Urban Employment Initiative is the long term, we just call it Momentum, is an employment readiness program that serves individuals 18 and older with 2 or more barriers to employment. There are a lot of other agencies in our city that help with employment. We have specifically stuck to those individuals that are harder to serve. And so if you come to us and you have less than 2 barriers to employment, we actually refer you out. And so some of the barriers that we work with, and some others were mentioned as well, criminal background, 83% of those that we have enrolled have had a criminal background. Little or no employment history. Homelessness, 36% of those that we've enrolled were completely homeless when they came to us. Lack of high school diploma or GED, 74%. From generational poverty, 79%, and with a substance abuse past, 81%. And so these are some of the barriers that we work with, and each individual that we work with has 2 or more of these barriers. And one of the things that we like to say about barriers is that 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 1 + 1 equals 6 or 7, you know, as far as how difficult it is to try to overcome those barriers. And so it's exponential in the way they work on top of each other. And so some of the results that we've gotten from the program, which is a 6-week program every day, Monday through Friday, from 9 a.m. until noon, and it's 3 classes, and then we also do 20 hours a week of volunteer work experience that they have to complete as well, along with the program. And so we have 76% of those enrolled successfully graduate. So not everybody makes it through. It's actually a very grueling process, and it's not paid. These are individuals who have decided that they want to improve their life and that they're willing to dedicate the time to do that. 91% of our graduates are successfully placed in employment after graduation. We have 55 employers right now who are in our business network, which is a paid business network that employers pay to be a part of, and they access our talent pool. One of our employers said it this way, the individuals that we get from Momentum are 200% more successful here than the ones we get through our own hiring process. 78% are employed beyond the first 90 days of employment and 60% beyond the first 180 days. If you're not familiar with employment readiness, that's pretty good. And then average starting wage is just under $13 per hour. And so we're not placing people in minimum wage jobs. We're placing them in a lot of industry-specific, high demand, and skilled trades areas.
So how do we get there? Those numbers are cumulative for the life of the program. Those aren't just cherry-picked the last 6 months. Those are how this program has performed. But in order to understand the power, we need to go back a little bit to talk about the roots of this program and where it started. We heard a lot about grassroots and the power of grassroots organizing, and that's how this organization started. In 1999, our founder was a high school teacher at one of the alternative high schools in Kalamazoo. And he noticed that in the services he provided in other agencies that they worked with, that most of the services targeting our most vulnerable youth were reactive. And by reactive, I mean individuals would have to self-determine that they would possibly fit going to that facility. They would have to figure out how to get there. They would have to, and that cost money, bus fares, that sort of a thing. And then they would show up, and the person that was serving them or going to help them would be in their comfortable position, and the person that needed help would be uncomfortable. Now, we all have, in this room, I would suspect, we have an emotional capacity for difficult things. I bet you most of the people in this room, if you asked if a meeting is canceled or a meeting doesn't turn out exactly the way you want it, it's not always a huge deal. I know for myself, I had a meeting canceled last week, and I was like, finally, I have an hour to catch up on emails and make a couple phone calls, right? That's true, right? So, but the population we're working with, maybe they used their last $3 to get across town to make it to that meeting. Maybe this was their hope. Maybe they had been saying, you know, I really need to go back and finish my high school diploma. Maybe I need to do this chance. And they built up this hope, this reserve of hope, in order to be able to engage in this service. And they get there, and it doesn't do what they want. It doesn't meet their needs. Now they're set back farther than they were previously. Their reserve of hope, and maybe their reserve of cash, is gone, and the service wasn't what it cracked up to be. And so our founder said, you know what? I'm going to go out and meet these individuals. I'm going to go to their turf. I'm going to put myself in that uncomfortable situation and put them where they're comfortable. So after work, he did this from 1999 until 2006, he was going out into the worst neighborhoods that we had, to the worst streets, not in the middle of the day, in the evening, to meet individuals, to see what their world was like, to see what they were struggling with, to see how they evaluated things and how they made decisions. He worked with gang leaders, he worked with drug dealers, he worked with kids that had dropped out of school, kids that were thinking about dropping out of school. All these individuals were who he reached out to and said, I want to know your story. But more importantly, what he was trying to answer is, I see that you're valuable enough to put myself in an uncomfortable situation. It's not about me, it's about you. And I think as the roots of this program are set up that way, that it's not about our comfort, it's not about how easy it is for us to serve, it's about the end user, it's about the person that we're trying to connect to the program. Their experience is more important than our experience. So from 99 until 2012, that's all our organization was what we call outreach. In the neighborhoods, thousands and thousands of interactions every single year. Until 2012. And this is crazy, this always gets me. One of the individuals that Nate had worked with, who had founded one of the most notorious gangs in Kalamazoo, came to us and said, you know, all my friends want to work. All my friends want to end this life and end this cycle. Do you think there's a way that we could create a program that would help us access jobs and change our lives? So think about that. The Momentum program, with the stats that you saw, the idea came from a connectedness to the community, a willingness to listen to the population that you were going to serve, and the relationship to allow that individual to come forward. From when Nate started working with that individual, whose name is Estevan, who is now on staff and is our director of outreach, till when Esto left the gang life, was about 7 years of relationships, of conversations. But most importantly, it was 7 years of not judging Esto for the life that he lived, not judging Esto for the life experiences that he had, and being willing to see him as a person. It's important that when we do this work, when we interact with people that have different backgrounds than us, different socioeconomic status, that we're not looking at them as a number, that we're looking at them as a very unique individual that has skills, has talents, has dreams, has hopes, has fears. When we see them as that person, there's something that powerful that happens. So in a second, we're going to show a video. And this video is interviews with people that have gone through the Momentum program. And they're talking about their lives prior to starting that. So.
I have several different charges, one felony charge, and they were all drug related. It was always looked at negative, and I would do well in my interviews, and I get to the background check, and that would get me every time.
When I would get any interviews, they would look at, my record, and, you could just see that they had no trust in me, they wanted to, but they couldn't.
Sometimes your name, given my name is Nikoshi, I've lost jobs because of that. People think that I may be a certain way, I may act a certain way based off of my name or my appearance, and it's not true. Those things are very hard to jump over.
Being a kid wasn't the best. We jumped from home to home for quite a bit.
The struggle with being a single mom is just not having enough money, not having enough time to spend with your kids.
I remember melting snow just to get water to cook with.
At 11 years old, I left my mother's house and I moved out. I got introduced to the drug game. From there, my life went in a spiral.
My dad was an addict. His dad was an addict. His dad was an addict. And they had never seen it change.
We had it really hard. Never met my dad. My mom was disabled, and there was 5 of us. I started selling drugs. And where I was from, that was idolized. That was everybody's goal. That's what they wanted to do when they grew up. Growing up like that makes you appreciate everything you get when you're old enough to get it yourself.
When I was 21 and I found out that I was gonna be a father. And I was behind bars when I got the news.
So I felt like everything I was doing was just gonna fall.
I had nothing. I had nothing left.
I got 9 kids, so I definitely felt hopeless. I wanted to give up.
I had just lost my house, my wife, my children, my vehicles, and pretty much all self-respect.
I just lost all faith in that I would never be able to find a job.
I was homeless.
Well, after a while, you become defeated, and you kind of start not thinking that there is any hope, and that nobody's going to give you a chance.
I had no outlet. I didn't have a way to escape that life. As much as I wanted to leave that life, that's where I was at.
So I was really looking to change things around. I just didn't know how to do it.
Those are just a few of the stories. And every time we run a momentum term, I think we're both shocked how we hear something that's worse than what we heard before. That we hear somebody that their situation is more dire, more desperate, more just shocking. That individuals that are in our community struggle like this. And they live a mile from us, they live 2 miles from us, and we don't know. But what happens when your goal is a relationship? What happens when you see these individuals with these stories as talented? What happens to your community when you start to create a system that allows people like Alejandro to get a job? What happens to your overall community? When Brian and I started with this organization 4 years ago, we had 3 part-time staff members and an annual budget of $450,000 a year. At that time, our program was an idea. We started at the end of year 1 of Momentum. They'd enrolled 45 people, they had graduated 19 people, but there was one thing that we saw, and we saw an individual with an extensive criminal background gain full-time employment at a manufacturer. And we're like, if we can do it once, I bet we can do it again. And over the past 4 years, the staff has grown from 3 part-time people to 16 full-time people. Our budget has grown from $450,000 to $2.3 million without state aid, without federal dollars plugged in. That's all private donations. Because we were doing something differently, because we were valuing the life and the effort of these individuals, the program has made an incredible impact on our community. We have worked and changed hiring practices at 105 different employers in our area. We have 105 employers that are looking at individuals with backgrounds or individuals with barriers differently, that they're giving them opportunities, that they're meeting their staffing needs. In the state of Michigan, we have a problem with recidivism. Does everybody in the room know what that big, crazy, long word is? It's the rate at which individuals go back to prison in the first year. In the state of Michigan, our recidivism rate is 35%. More than 1 in 3 individuals upon release will be back in prison within the next year. What happens when you create a program that sees those individuals and wants to give them opportunity? What does that do to your recidivism rate? Ours currently is less than 2%. Same individuals, same population. What does this do to your economy? When you take individuals that have been pushed aside and said, as a society, we've said we don't need you. We've said we don't need you to be part of our economic situation. What happens when you start bringing them back in? To date, the Momentum program has had a, conservatively, $6 million economic impact on our community through wages earned, taxes paid, reduction in dollars spent incarcerated individuals from 200 people that have entered the workforce. Imagine what happens when we start scaling this in our community and we take our neighborhoods that are vulnerable, take our neighborhoods that are hurting, and we give them an opportunity. We give them a path out. That's what they want. That's what we want. But the problem is sometimes we get in the way of that. Our bias, our ego, our opinions on individuals. You know, we've had to, and we continue to do, hard work as a staff to be able to say, no matter what your criminal background is, no matter what you've done, we're going to give you that opportunity. But what happens when you do that is you see hope springing forward. You have individuals that are coming to us after 30 years of incarceration, and they go through training and they get a job. Isn't that what we need? When we have individuals that in our communities that all they've ever seen from their parents and their aunts and uncles is, not work. And all of a sudden, I always use the crazy uncle example. We all have a crazy uncle. We all have that crazy relative that everybody's like, that's your excuse for not performing. Well, this program is helping those crazy uncles get back on their feet. And those crazy aunts do the same thing. And it spreads hope. And it creates a place where now in Kalamazoo, there are more employers that are hiring people with barriers than not. And we'll get into it a little bit more, but here's the hint. The employers that have engaged in this work, that have started from the beginning with us, that have been working with us, and said, you know what, we are going to look at this, and we're going to work to change systems. We're going to look at how we affect this and how we can participate. They don't have talent issues. They don't have as many open positions. They're not just hiring from us, they're hiring from across the board. But because they've engaged in this and they've added this element of, you know what, this is better for all of us, it really makes a difference in how you're seen and how you're viewed in the community. So Go ahead.
So this is a video of individuals who have gone through some of the same ones you just saw about the before and the barriers that they face. This next video is the after.
And I think it's great to have him. I think we made a great decision to bring him on.
I think I'm just more focused, more driven. Momentum actually is like one big, gigantic support system.
Shupen, I mean, for me, has been an awesome employer. This is the best job I've ever had, and because I have this, my kids are happier now. They're able to see Dad more often. They don't have to worry about constantly if Dad's gonna go to jail.
So I work at Big B Coffee. I've worked there for about a year. The person I was before I started the program and the person I am today, like I would never like change that for anything. With my past and with everything I've went through, like it's possible. I just want to show people it's possible regardless of what they've been through.
I definitely see myself, since graduating from Momentum, a little more empowered.
Since I graduated Momentum, I've moved into our own place. I got married.
I look back and it just still blows my mind. They say that, you know, it will open doors for you and it will open doors for you.
Having steady employment, I think that's one of my biggest successes for right now.
I got a good job I've been at for 7 months. I'm getting more money so I can do more things for myself and for my family.
Got a great job, make great money, insurance, everything.
I have my own townhouse. My children are being transitioned home. I just bought my own car, and I have the best job I've ever had in my life. It's just amazing.
My daughter is definitely the apple of my eye. She is the most precious thing. Knowing that I have somebody looking up to me now is the most amazing feeling. That love that I show her, I never felt it before, so just being able to do that in itself is a beautiful thing.
Don't tell John this, but he's about ready to get a full-time offer from us.
I feel like I finally broke the Sutton curse, you know? I got out of that addiction and I found a new way to live.
So I'm gonna try. I'm gonna attempt to talk after that because I know each and every one of them. So it's pretty emotional for me. But how do we get here? First of all, Momentum is, we talk about it being a program, but one of the things that we share is it's an opportunity. And that's what we have to provide. We have to provide roads of opportunity for individuals so that it's not something where people are pigeonholed in different situations. Jim, I think you said about the fact that we need soft skills, essential skills, life skills. Those are the things that we cover. When we talk about problem solving, we talk about communication, we deal with all those issues, and we have a tremendous curriculum that we utilize, but I'll be honest with you, it has very little to do with what we teach. It really has more to do with how we approach people. You know, and if I were to point to one thing, yeah, we have a great curriculum. Yeah, we've done a lot of research to find out how to help people overcome early childhood trauma. We've done a lot of those type of things, but if we were to boil it down, it really comes down to the culture in which you deliver it. And that's something that I don't think is limited to a small nonprofit in Kalamazoo. I think that's something that we can create everywhere, whether it's at the employer level, and that's something that we work very hard with our employers. If you're in HR, you're commander-in-chief of culture, right? And so making sure that we have a culture that supports people. So it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And this gentleman right here, he was actually, Luke mentioned, the very first gentleman that we had in the program who got placed at a manufacturer with an extensive background. His name is BJ. He was placed at Sigma Machine. And this picture is so powerful to me because this picture was actually taken 4 years on the job. So he had been working at Sigma Machine for 4 years successfully. 4 years after he had completed Momentum, he got this tattoo. And it says Momentum on it if you can't read it. Nobody told him that you should get a tattoo. He decided to do that. Nobody does that 4 years after a program because of an impact of a curriculum. Nobody does that for that reason. It had something to do with a life-change experience that came through the culture that was created and the way we embrace people, the way we approach people. And that's one of the things that I wanted to really point out here. You know, when we deal with culture, it's about how we approach things. And so we want to give you some keys about how we approach stuff. But there's something very interesting. Daniel Coyle, the author of The Culture Code, said it this way. He said, group culture is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. Now, all of us know when there's a great culture that exists somewhere. I love football, and I love to watch football, and I was actually watching some at the hotel last night. I'm not saying that that was great football last night, but it was football, and so that was great. But we're familiar when a team has a winning culture that just keeps breeding winning, right? I look at the New England Patriots, and you might not be a Patriots fan, but they have a fantastic culture to where they can take individuals who have had many, many problems with other teams, and they can bring them into their culture and they produce for them, because culture changes things. And then all of us have probably had the experience of being at some place that we've worked before that wasn't a very good culture, and the impact that that had on us, and probably forced us to leave at some point, right? And so culture can have a huge impact, and so we have to look at that. And so one of the first culture keys that we want to talk to you about is broken out in our mission.
Yep. Which, to communicate through our actions that we value every individual. Not some, not the ones we get along with, not the ones we understand, but every. And this is hard. In Kalamazoo, our job with that, every individual, is targeting individuals that have multiple barriers, interacting with individuals that, as a society, we have pushed aside. Now with Kalamazoo, we have some similar stats to you all. We have a very low unemployment rate. For us, it's at 3.7%, which is good. We want low unemployment. But to go along with that statistic, we have a 35% poverty rate within our city. And then when you break down the unemployment rate in some of our core neighborhoods, you see a different picture. As a community, we're not valuing everyone equally. In the neighborhood that we work in primarily, which is the Edison neighborhood, which we drove through your Edison neighborhood yesterday, largest neighborhood in our city, unemployment rate's 45%. If you go to the other minority neighborhood in our city, unemployment rate's over 50%. So valuing every individual sometimes means going to the individuals that society hasn't valued and telling them that you're valued. Is being intentional about who you're going after and the experiences that they have, and making sure that they have an experience where they know without a shadow of a doubt that they are valuable. So valuing every individual is important. Now, as we go through these, one of the things that I want to point out, and I'm going to continue to point out, is these aren't just our culture keys for how we interact with the population we serve. This is our organizational DNA. Communicate through our actions that we value every individual. That means even the partners that a year ago said you couldn't do it, and now they want to join your initiative, you're valuing them. Even if it's groups that have taken credit for your work, and now they want to jump on board, it's valuing them. It's valuing everybody to the point where we can go out and nobody has to question, nobody has to say, I wonder how Urban Alliance feels about this population. Everybody knows.
And so in Kalamazoo, we have a very similar situation to what I've heard expressed here, in that a low unemployment rate, and everybody's talking about developing the youth, but that takes years. We have employers who need people yesterday, right? And so one of the things that we looked at is where is a talent pool? And we found them in some of the core neighborhoods. We found a talent pool. And what we found is that some of the biases that were there about the individuals that existed both within the employers and in the workforce development community were not true. They were not true. You found individuals who had barriers, but they wanted to work. They wanted to overcome those barriers. They just didn't know how. They didn't know how to get out. And so part of what we looked at is these same individuals that were being excluded through different hiring practices. We had to challenge some of those hiring practices. We had to go in and meet one-on-one through relationship and deal with how can we help overcome this? How can we mitigate your risk? What can we do? And so we went through this process. You know, in dealing with value and valuing every person, one of the things we had to also realize is we had to meet them where they are. In other words, we can't say you need to come to this other side of town where we have this wonderful facility and we're all decked out and ready to meet you and we're going to treat you really well. We had to actually go into the neighborhoods, and we did that through outreach, but we also do that through the Momentum program. The Momentum program is small. We keep it small. It's 12 people meeting in one location. We have multiple locations around the city, but it's 12 at each one, and we do it right in the core neighborhoods so that transportation is not an issue. We're coming to where you're at and overcoming that. In addition to that, when we deal with the programmatic side of Momentum, we don't deal with it as, because sometimes people don't make it through. We don't deal with that from the standpoint of, okay, you're kicked out of the program. You missed a few days, you're kicked out of the program. We come to them based upon relationship because we do value them. And so we have a conversation. What happened? What's going on? And sometimes those conversations are difficult. Those one-on-one conversations can be very uncomfortable. And especially if people, when they feel like they're back in the corner, they'll lie in your face. But you just have to continue to push through it, deal with it. And all the HR people said, amen. Do we have any HR people in here? Anybody from HR? All right, cool. And so with all of that, it's about recognizing people's value, and then how do we behave when we are seeing value in everyone? How does that change the way we approach individuals? How does that change how we approach the hiring process? Culture key number 2 is relationship first. Relationship first. And we take culture, like I said, very, very seriously where we are. Actually, even in our titles, we've changed that. Our director of operations is not called our director of operations, he's called our director of culture. And so we're about maintaining a culture throughout the entire staff that we have because we recognize this is something that has to be guarded. In addition to that, my actual title is Senior Director of Relationships. And what I'm actually over is all of our programming. But our programming is based relationally. And so it's about managing those relationships. So when we say relationship first, we mean that comes first all the way across the board. So it's not, to us, it's not about the outcomes as much as it is about the person. And so what would your work look like if you really viewed, or if we really viewed our clients as our friends? How would we approach things differently? How would we approach some of the difficulties that they're facing? How would we interact with them? And so we get to know every single person, and that's one of the things that, I can tell you every single person that you saw in the video, I can tell you their story. Because every person, this is the thing that I found, is every single person who has a barrier has a story. They didn't get there by accident. Some of them are extremely tragic. We have a young woman who lives just across the street from our main office in the Edison neighborhood, and she's never gone through the Momentum program. She's not interested. She doesn't want to, but she comes to our office, I think, almost every day. And her name is Issa, and I only give you her first name because nobody here will know her, so I won't get in trouble for that. But she has a horrendous story, one of the worst stories I have ever heard in my life, and she's an extremely unusual individual. She will park right in front of you at your desk without asking whether she can come in and sit down. And she'll sit there and she'll just start talking to you about what's going on in her life. And she's extremely intelligent, extremely well-spoken, but she will eat up a ton of your time. And it's easy when you're a busy individual to stop and go, you got to go away, and to try to run away from her. And one of the things that we say on our staff is that we say Issa is the proving ground of whether you belong here or not. So there'll actually be times where I'll just, Issa will come in the door and I'll be like, Issa, we got a new employee. You need to go meet him. Because we want to see how they interact with Issa. We want to see how they deal with going through that whole process. Because how we relate to people determines so much about us and about what we're really there for. And so are we there for the numbers? Are we trying to do programs just so that we can get money and have numbers? No. It's not about that for us. And that's something that we've worked very, very hard to overcome in many ways.
One of the other things, Brian was talking about new employees. And, we see the world differently as an organization. And so when we screen employees, or we're interviewing employees, one of the very, very first questions that we ask is, do you think people can change? If you're relationship first, and you've seen the power of transformation that takes place, you know that people can change. But do you believe people can change? Do you believe a life can be redeemed? And if the answer is, sometimes, depends on the circumstances, depending on what they did, you're probably not going to be a fit. Because how you see that individual, that relationship dictating how you see what their opportunity is, matters in the long run.
Our next culture key is good enough is not good enough, we say. Now it would be easier for us to say excellence, right? Because everybody likes the term excellence. And so one of our keys of our culture is excellence. But we don't say that. We say good enough is not good enough. Because one of the temptations when you're dealing with individuals who have a lot of challenges and who really don't expect very much is to lower your expectations of what you offer to an individual. Well, that's good enough. That interaction, that's more than what they would get on their own. And so we say good enough is not good enough. In other words, we are going to push towards excellence. And excellence is not an outcome. You don't ever arrive at it. Excellence is an attitude. And it's an attitude that you can carry every single day. And it's how you approach people. It's how you decide to be present with people regardless of what the situation is. And so when we talk about good enough is not good enough, we have to be happy with the success that we get with even one individual. And when we do that, we find that it compounds really, really easily. It's when you start looking in the macrocosm, right, the big side of everything, and saying, okay, we need to have this many people go through, and we need to have this much success, and we need to do that. We didn't even run any numbers for the first 2 years of the program, and then when I finally decided, because we had to apply for some grants, we decided, okay, let's run some numbers. We were shocked. We were like, wow, this is really good. This is doing really well. Because that's not what it was about. It was about the individuals. One of the things that astounds me sometimes when I'm dealing with employers, we had an individual who was successfully employed with an employer for 2 years. And then some issues started happening within his family. And there was some legal things that started happening with a brother and their kid, and he had to take the kids. And this whole thing started compounding, and it started affecting the way he was showing up at work because it was spilling over. I mean, it was some deep, heavy stuff. And then there was a death in the family that happened as well. And so things just kind of fell in this crisis mode, right? And his attendance started falling off. And he, at the company that he worked at, he pointed out. In other words, he had too many points, so they had to let him go, right? And when you look at that, I understand it, because we have attendance issues that we have to deal with, with going through the program. We run everything on a points basis and everything as well. But when you look at how much you actually invested in the training of that individual and the fact that they had been on the job for 2 years, a solid, amazing employee, and then they hit a crisis point, why is that good enough? Why don't we put relationship first, right? Why don't we look at that and say, how can I help you through this time and then get you back in so you're successful? You're going to save a lot of money in the long run, I'll be honest with you. All right, that was my spiel on that side. How would our programs look if those we serve, sorry, were actually those that we serve? In other words, we're not serving funding. We're not serving the foundations that are demanding certain things out of us. That's one of the reasons we don't receive any state funding or federal funding for what we do, because we like to do it the way we need to do it.
And in that, sometimes it's going to make people uncomfortable. Yeah. And this process, this building right here is what you see. This is the outcome of loving people, of relationship first, of good enough is not good enough. This is our tech center. So in our area, we have a community college that we started partnering with because employers were saying, man, we love hiring your graduates. We want some technical training. So we went to this community college and said, we know you have this tech campus, and you have CNC programs, and you have production tech programs. Can we, try to come up with some sort of a partnership? And they said, well, who do you serve? We said, well, 88% of those that go through our program have criminal backgrounds, and about 50% don't have high school diplomas or GEDs. And they said, well, we won't accept them as students. I said, why? Why? And they said, well, one side of it is we want to make sure that they comprehend the material. Totally understandable. Other side of it is we want the people that graduate from our program to get a job. And so because we'd had 2 years of work, we went and got 10 employers that said, yep, we'll hire people with criminal backgrounds. We'll hire people without a high school diploma or GED. So then we started out trying to figure out what level of math you really needed to run a CNC machine. And it's not high school level math. So KVCC, the community college, said, let's try this. So the first time we went through, they said, you know what? Based on the curriculum and what we see, 8th grade level math is going to be enough. So we ran it. Everybody passed. And so us, good enough is not good enough, knowing that we had a large percentage of our participants that had maybe 6th grade level math, maybe 5th grade level math, we wanted to push it. Then we went down to 7th grade. Everybody passed. Everybody was hired. We went down to 6th grade. Everybody passed. Everybody was hired. So what was happened as a system that was created with the community college, which made sense when they set it up. Employers were only hiring people with high school diplomas, and they were not hiring people with criminal backgrounds. But we've shifted into a different economy. Those individuals that don't have criminal backgrounds and have high school diplomas aren't signing up for CNC programs. Because prior to working with us, these programs at the community college were not running because they could not get enough people in them. The other way that we pushed and that we opened up this tech campus is our community college's tech center was a 1-hour bus ride from our core city, where most of the residents that were going to engage with that process lived. 1 hour on a bus. Then when you got off the bus, you had a 15-minute walk to get to the campus. Pushing and not good enough is not good enough means that you find a partner that has an old warehouse and you start your own tech center 5 minutes from the city core to make it accessible for individuals. The cool thing about this is, and we'll get into a little bit about who gets the credit for things in a minute, this whole thing spun up in 3 months. From an empty warehouse to a facility where we had partners with Western Michigan University, Kalamazoo Valley Community College, the workforce development state agencies involved, running our full training, all because we kept asking, why not, and pushing.
And so at this campus, we utilize one of our employment partners who has over 1 million square feet of warehouse within our city. And this was one that they had where they were using the back as a warehouse, and the front had all these offices in it, and they weren't using it. And he approached us and said, hey, you guys think you could use these? We said, I think we can. And so we basically moved in for free, and it was completely furnished already. And so some amazing things can happen when you stop worrying about how and you start learning about what. what's the right thing to do. And so now we have run warehouse management and inventory control out of this facility. We have 3 forklifts that were donated to us. One is a stand-up, 2 sit-down, 1 gas, 1 electric. We also run a production tech academy out of this. We also just purchased and stocked it with 2 Haas CNC machines, where we have done CNC machining in the past, but we're going to ramp that up to where 50% of the training is experiential. So they'll be running the machines for 50% of their hours out at the facility. And we've actually changed the way we do training from an apprenticeship model to a staging model. So we do first level training, and then they get the job and they start working. They've been working there for 6 months. The employer will actually pay us to send the individuals back to then start learning about how to do setup. And so then we train setup. And then they become setup, and they get a $6 an hour, $7 an hour bump in their pay once they become setup. And then once they've been working for a couple of years, maybe they want to do programming. And so then they can come back and they can learn how to do programming, and you can pretty much write your check if you do programming in Kalamazoo, I'm just saying. So all of that is pretty phenomenal, and that's happened because we kept pushing, what that looks like. And here's one of the forklifts. And so the next key, culture key number 4, is talent is greater than your past.
This is a big one. So for HR professionals, for anybody in the business community, talent is one of those hot words that we're using right now, right? Where's the talent? Who has talent? More importantly, who has potential? We want to build our own. I heard stories of the employer panel, and they're saying, yeah, we're bringing them on as interns, we're developing them, we're looking at the future, right? That's what we do. And we apply that to most of the population. Unless you've made a mistake. Unless you have a criminal background, or you have substance abuse, or bad credit, then we're only concerned about your past. Does that make sense? Does that seem fair to do that? Is that how we're going to? So we can say, you have all of these individuals that you're looking at solely at their potential. You're not looking at what, bumps they've had along the way if they have no criminal record. I think the mayor joked, that agreement, we're not going to talk about what happened in high school. We all have done stuff that we probably should have been arrested for, honestly. Right? I see a few sheepish hands going up, but I'm pretty sure we all, whether it's driving too fast, all those things make a difference. But we're not comfortable putting that same talent lens on people that have a criminal background. But that has to change. That has to change if we want to move forward, because you are more than the worst day of your entire life. And when you hear the stories and you see what's going on, some of these individuals, bad choices. Some of these individuals, the life that they were born into, where they're at right now, the fact that they're alive, the fact that they're even showing up, is a miracle. And many of us would not be in that place where they are if we'd had lived the life that they have. So it's not always a choice that they live this life. And we have to look at this lens. We have to rethink how we're looking and how we're pigeonholing people because of something that happened. If we're going to use the talent lens, if we're going to look at potential, we have to be equitable and apply that across the board. Otherwise, we need to do digging and say, well, you don't have a criminal background, but, what do you do after graduation? What was your senior year like? Because that's how things go. And to wrap up, I saw the 5 minutes. We can keep talking about this forever. Credit doesn't matter. This is huge. I heard some of the language about this as we were talking about coming together, about aligning behind a mission, aligning behind what the future is going to look like. Your mission work, the work that you guys are going to be doing in this room, that you're going to be leading forward, is greater than anybody's individual egos or an organizational ego. I think Harry Truman said it best. It's amazing what we can accomplish when we don't care who gets the credit. That's a big thing. What does that look like lived out? So we've worked in, Brian and I have there, 4 years. For 4 years, the city of Kalamazoo has been taking credit for our program. They have. They say, we have this great workforce development program. They talk about it. Guess how many dollars they've invested in it? 0. Does it matter? I mean, there's some times where you're like, it'd be nice if you handed us a little bit of money while you're taking credit for it. But in the grand scheme of things, if they're talking about it, if they're pitching this, if they're talking to employers, they are advancing our mission. And that is more important than them taking credit for something that they didn't necessarily do. So we have to stop competing. I just read an article this morning where they were talking about scarcity and how we always say there's only so many pieces of the pie, how there's not enough resources to do this, there's not enough funding to do this. Well, I would challenge you to think bigger. If the mission is big enough, if the goal is large enough, the funds will be there. The resources are there. They take the minds, take the businesses, take the agencies and say, how do we change this? If we really cared enough. And do we care enough? As a region, do you care enough about these issues, about solving your talent gaps, to lay aside who gets the credit, whose name is on it, who's keynoting this, who's, writing this paper? Those things will happen. And we can get focused on those, and that causes us to compete against each other. But what this program has taught us is that when we come together, what we can accomplish is so much greater than when we're working against each other. So it is possible. It is possible to have a city where people are aligning around this mission. And sometimes it doesn't take a large group. It takes 2 or 3 to start meeting together and saying, you know what, we're going to make a difference. And then we're going to pull in another partner. And then we're going to pull in the partner that said we couldn't do it after we've already done it. And we're going to push this forward. But we have to move. If we want the systemic change that we need, we have to realize that it's not about us.
So when it comes down to bottom line, right, there is a need for talent, but there is a talent pool that exists. I mean, I've talked to people, we've won on the tours, I've met people. There is a talent pool here. Are you willing to do the things that you need to do and to be the change that is needed in order to be able to access that talent pool and to solve some of the issues that you're dealing with? It can be done. There's nothing special about us. We just pushed forward into this. We saw a need, we pushed forward about meeting it, and you can do the same thing. Thank you very much for your time.
I looked out one time, and no one was on their phone. So I think there was some impact there. Thank you again to Brian and Luke. Very impactful message. And when you come to events like this and you hear people talk about programs, you're thinking, well, they did it up there. Can we do it here? Well, I think we can do it here. And I think there's probably some people that maybe are a little offended by some stuff they said. If you're an educator or politician or whatever, that's fine, because it's going to take that energy to make some things happen.